Yeah, my name's Jamie Catto from One Giant Leap.
Now, usually I start doing interviews and it's just simply about a band's new album, but here it's a little more complicated than that. So first you gotta explain what One Giant Leap is all about.
That is going to take some time. Okay, I'll try and do it as quickly as possible. It began as the music, where we were sort of working with music from all around the world, but we didn't like the way that most people are doing that kind of fusion, because it's so light and it's so... None of it had the element in it of... any kind of darkness or panic or all that good juicy stuff that makes music exciting. It was also sort of coffee table. And there's this album, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, by Brian Eno and David Byrne, that we were in love with. And so the first idea was to make this music with all these different people the way that we wanted to hear it, and to travel around meeting them, not sample them, but meet them and take our music with them. In the past, people always make music by recording somewhere, then bringing the Indian drummer home and then mixing it and doing everything, but then the Indian drummer never actually collaborates. They don't actually hear any music they're playing to or anything like that. So we wanted to actually take our music with us. We took a mobile studio with us. We put the headphones on someone, let's say in India, and they can hear the track. They play along with the track, so they're working with, when we're talking about it, we're working with it musically, so we're really collaborating, but also they can hear in their ears the track, but also they can hear the drummer last week in Uganda and what he did. So you're not only responding to us, but you're responding to those other musicians that have played on that track. So you get a real sense of people. You don't end up with lots of different performances that don't work. You end up with a piece of music that was purely made out of the response musically from each element. So that was how it began. And then because we were signed to Palm Pictures, which is the future of DVD and music and stuff, they said, oh, we love your videos from Faithless, and we love, will you do a film? So we had to think about a film, and because it's now visual, we can draw on not only all the inspiration from all the different musicians we're going to be working with around the world, but we can draw inspiration from, you can get a great hit of inspiration from a great book, or a great lecture from a guru or a scientist, or just someone in the street, or anybody. So we thought, okay, just like a CD has 12 songs, we'll make a DVD with 12 films, not 12 pop videos, 12 little films. The music from the album will become the music for those films, but more than that, each of the 12 films will deal with one unanswerable question, one big subject. So there's one film, sex, another one, money, another one, God, another one, conflict, another one, time, death, all these big subjects. And we just went to find everyone that could inspire us. Kurt Vonnegut, Dennis Hopper, Tom Robbins, all these kind of guys. Also gravediggers, porn stars, all kinds of people. And when they all talk about time, they all say a totally different thing, and some of them it's heavy, some of it's sad, some of it's funny, some of it's poignant, and some of it's long, some of it's short, and you get the kind of best of it all, and you end up with a cubist narrative from all these interviews. People are used to being interviewed about themselves, but when they're interviewed about it all, then they give totally different answers. No one's asking Dennis Hopper, when did you get into film? You're asking him about the nature of time or inspiration, and you get really interesting stuff from these great minds. So you end up, let's say the Time film, all the great things everybody said about time, edited together, you end up with a kind of a cubist narrative, all these different fragments, different angles of one subject. And with the music and also the imagery, which we did in the same way, you end up with a little window into that subject that just reflects a few questions, a few ideas. It's not trying to make any statement or give any answers, but just a film album.
So how did people respond to your idea? Because I can imagine people will go like, wait, well, these guys must be nuts.
Exactly, they must be nuts, but if they're willing to come to my living room tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock just for an hour, and I'm free, why not? Sounds crazy. And if you're Dennis Hopper or you're Michael Stipe or whoever, you might think, actually, I'm used to doing the same gig every day, or the same, it's a bit different. And also the great thing about it is when you're doing your own album and you're in the studio, the red light comes on and you're recording, there's a kind of anxiety there that, it's your album, it's all like your ego gets involved, you're thinking it, you're hoping it's going to work. But when somebody just comes to your place and you just do a little collaboration for an hour, it's so relaxed and so kind of, you don't really care because it's not for your album and it's just a bit of fun. That's actually where the great performances come from. So we were, One Giant Leap gave just the perfect environment with our mobile studio and everything to just get the best out of everybody.
Now, what I was wondering about, because I heard your music, and still, how did you manage to get from all these influences from all parts of the world to make it into something coherent? Because to me, like, with me, probably it would end in total chaos.
Well, precisely because they are playing and listening to each other while they are playing. So of course it's coherent, because the drummer is playing with the violin player in his ears and the vocalist in his ears, so it all fits together. It's the perfect way to do it, because it's already slotted in together, the perfect amount of space, the perfect amount of playing. So you know it's going to be coherent at every small step, because it's just adding to the last small step. It's not like we suddenly have millions of tiny little individual things we have to make work. Like in the interviews, there are only 12 subjects that we're making the films about, so either it fits into sex, or it fits into money, or it fits into time, or it doesn't go anywhere, you know. But at the end of the day, all the things that we think when we're looking through the tapes that people said that are interesting about male sexuality, for instance. I mean, the whole point of the film was from the concept of, if you took a step back from the world, like if you were an alien or you'd never been here, and you looked at pornography and you thought, isn't it strange, you know, the male species, they like to have on screens these sort of different scenes of people having sex, and yet they don't really talk about them in their relationships so much. I mean, you would think that was odd if you had never been, if it was like almost like some science fiction kind of a thing. And also the way that money now is more important than politics, and that you can't pass a law, like an environmental law, to protect somebody. You can't pass that law if it gets in the way of trade. That comes number one. Trade is everything, you know. So isn't that strange? What a strange choice for the people of this species to make, you know. There's so many things like that, or you know, the fact that we don't think beyond next week anymore. That they have, you know, these things are strange to us. We want to discuss them.
So how does that work? For instance, like the thing you did on sex, like how do you work that into a track? How did you do that?
Well, the track was already building itself, and we were, that particular track, we were sitting in the studio and we were chatting about it, and we played a bit of music, and this guy Tim Booth happened to be there just visiting, and he started writing a poem, which is the kind of thing that he does. And when Eddie Reader arrived that day, she said, I don't have any lyrics with me. In fact, it takes me a long time to get going, so please be patient. And the music started, and Tim said, oh, she goes, I don't have anything to sing. And Tim goes, oh, well, I just wrote this. I'll just start off with this. So she starts, and she just breaks into song. It was unbelievable. And that was the take. You know, the whole session lasted about 10 minutes. You know, that was the take. It hasn't changed since that day, that piece of music. It was so perfect. And the lyrics, we half understood the lyrics, but not fully. Then suddenly, a few months later, we are in San Francisco, and we're interviewing this woman who is a published poet called Cozy Fabian. She's also a prostitute. And she talks about the violence that women do to men. She goes, you've got to be good, and all the sexual responsibilities on you. And men feel so loaded, you know, that they can't talk about their real sexual needs in relationships because we don't have that space anymore. There's just all this pressure. And I created a place for men to indulge their fascination in the woman's body without, you know, having to impress me. You know, you don't have to impress me, and men need that. And she starts talking all about that and how the men's sexuality is very complex. There's a neediness there that's very complex, all this stuff. And we just weren't expecting that. And when you suddenly hear that with the lyrics that Eddie is singing and these images, it was amazing just to watch it come together, you know, because it just... The best kind of work is where you're listening, not thinking. If your girlfriend gets dumped and she comes to you and she pours her heart out and you talk to her, you don't think about what to say, you know what I mean? You just chat to her, and out comes the stuff from your heart, and some of it's news to you, you know, some of it, you go, wow, this is really... Or when you're, you know... And that's how the best, not just advice, but the best intuition, the best music, the best everything, writing, comes from, hopefully, when you're not so busy in your mind trying to make it something, and you can actually listen to what it wants to be. And it sounds a bit hippie, but it really does work.
I think I sort of like missed out on, or I didn't really ask you how you did this practically. I mean, you told me you took a little studio along, but you tell me a little bit more about the whole trip, how you...
Well, we planned a route, and there was usually one person in each place we really wanted to work with, like Baba Mal in Senegal, or Hari Prasad Chaurasia in Mumbai in India, or Michael in Georgia. And then we would... Duncan, genius, he built the mixing desk to run from 12 volts, which means it could run from battery packs. So we had 6 hours of digital studio anywhere, miles from electricity, like in the desert in Rajasthan, or on a boat going down the Ganges, or on a mountain in Ghana. You know, you could go anywhere, set up the digital studio. Maybe a shepherd and the cows would walk through the mic stands, but it worked and it looked great. So we were able really to just go anywhere at any moment and record it with a proper digital studio. That was basically the bottom line on why the whole thing worked. And because everyone was playing, as I said, playing to each other, it had to fit. It was a foregone conclusion. And with all the interviews as well, we were having our own journey of discovery, about ourselves, meeting our heroes, talking about the big subjects that we've been discussing, and seeing if we could make any sense out of it all. And it was just, people just were mostly like laughing at us, because they just thought we were crazy. And that was almost why a lot of people agreed to do it, because it was just so much audacity, the arrogance to even try to make this big slice of life but we kept trying to explain that we weren't really trying to do anything. We weren't trying to make a message or a political statement or have any aim really, except that surely the end thing would be brilliant. That was about as far as it went, to make a film album, a new kind of DVD that other artists might do. Like David Bowie or David Byrne, they would have done it 20 years ago if they had the digital cameras and the laptops. So you bet they would have done it, and I hope, and I'm sure there are a million people right now doing what we're doing. I mean, it's not the most original idea. You go and collect all the things that inspire you, and it's a very postmodern liberation this digital age gives us, because you can recycle everything in different weird ways, and maybe that's going to create too much soup, but there'll be some cream at the top, I'm sure.